Welcome to the Daily AI News Digest. This explainer is sponsored by bestai.org. Today is July 24th, 2026. Let's look at today's market realities. We are tracking massive capital deployments in the semiconductor space, the evaluation of new open-weight frontier models, and federal cyber policy shifts out of Washington. On our rundown today, we'll examine the biggest market moves, parse through the latest product and model realities, look at regulation and policy signals, and finish up with our analyst's take on what this means for enterprise execution. Let's begin with the capital markets and the key catalysts converging on July 27th. Right now, liquidity constraints are colliding head-on with next-generation infrastructure demands. The headline number you need to know today is $8.6 billion. China's Changxin Memory Technologies, or CXMT, has officially priced its Shanghai Star Market IPO, formally making it Asia's largest public listing of 2026. Looking at the institutional data slated for Monday, July 27th, we're tracking two distinct market narratives. On one side, CXMT is entering the market with an implied valuation of roughly $87 billion. It drew about 500 times institutional oversubscription, which is largely driven by Beijing's aggressive memory localization push. Now, on the other side of the compute supply chain, U.S. data center infrastructure firm Applied Digital faces its Q4 earnings report. Analysts are expecting consensus revenues of $95.32 million, with options markets currently pricing in an implied volatility of 13 to 18%. We need to take a closer look at the fundamentals underlying CXMT's $87 billion implied valuation. In 2025, the company captured 7.7% of the global dream market share. By the first quarter of 2026, revenue reached 50.8 billion yuan, which translates to roughly $7.5 billion. That represents a 719% year-over-year growth, with first quarter net profits reported at 33.01 billion yuan. Crucially, CXMT is currently the only Chinese manufacturer targeting mass production of HBM3 memory. This is the high-bandwidth component strictly required to build competitive AI inference chips. Moving on to product and model realities, let's examine the Kimi K3 architecture and its security profile. Moonshot AI's Kimi K3 is actively shifting the open-weight ecosystem. Let's break down the specs. It operates on 2.8 trillion total parameters and features a 1 million token context window. It utilizes a highly efficient mixture of experts design, specifically a stable latent MoE architecture. This means it only activates 16 of its nearly 900 internal experts per token, optimizing compute efficiency and reducing operational costs. Additionally, its Kimi Delta attention mechanism allows for 6.3 times faster decoding at scale. Market trackers note that these open weights were actually released early on July 26th, ahead of the originally targeted July 27th date. To understand the enterprise implications of this release, we have to look at a joint cyber capability assessment conducted by the UK and US AI security institutes. In a simulated corporate network attack known as the Last Ones, which consists of 32 distinct steps, leading US closed models reached step 28.5 on average. Kimi 3 reached step 17. This firmly outperforms older open-weight models like GLM 5.2, which only reached step 11. But the data clearly shows K3 still significantly trails closed U.S. frontier models when it comes to autonomous cyber capability. Data from Carnegie Mellon's Exploit Bench reveals a critical distinction that enterprise security teams need to understand. Kimi K3 scored 32% on this benchmark. While its internal safeguards failed to prevent it from assisting in writing cyber exploits, the model inherently lacks the capability to execute that code autonomously. This is a specific, hard limitation that is critical for anyone evaluating open-source deployment risks right now. Turning to regulation and policy signals, the focus in Washington is clearly on hardening the infrastructure. Policy signals have shifted aggressively in this direction. President Trump's June 2nd executive order on AI innovation and security established rigid compliance deadlines. By July 2nd, the order required 30-day deliverables for hardening federal information systems with AI-enabled defenses. Looking ahead to August 1st, a 60-day deadline mandates the establishment of a trusted partner framework. This is happening alongside a classified AI benchmarking process that will be administered by the National Security Agency. We also have to examine the specific legal text of Section 3C of this order. It explicitly states that nothing in the section authorizes the creation of a mandatory governmental licensing, pre-clearance, or permitting requirement for the development, publication, or distribution of new AI models. This language maintains a voluntary compliance framework. At the same time, the order directs the Department of Justice to prioritize criminal enforcement against the unauthorized use of autonomous AI agents for cyber attacks. Concurrently, the administration has announced a major capital allocation, over $5 billion in federal funding. This money is designated to expand the Genesis mission's computational science infrastructure across the United States. This $5 billion allocation turns the Genesis mission into a massive, multi-agency mandate. It integrates 15 federal departments and utilizes supercomputing resources from 17 Department of Energy national labs. Berkeley Lab alone is leading 13 major AI-driven science projects within this framework. We're also seeing corporate commitments come into play, such as Google's injection of $40 million in cloud and token credits. The stated federal goal here is ambitious but clear: to double the pace of American scientific discovery within a decade. Now for the analyst's take. Let's synthesize what these strategic developments actually mean. Cutting through the industry noise, we need to look at how these parallel developments impact enterprise execution. The fundamental question underlying this week's news cycle is one of capitalization. Who pays for the next memory cycle? We are trying to determine which entities will actually finance the massive hardware and infrastructure requirements of the next generation AI memory cycle. The data illustrates a stark contrast in geopolitical compute strategies. On one side, Beijing's strategy involves driving domestic capital into localized HBM3 hardware production to insulate its supply chain against export controls. We clearly see this evidenced by the massive CXMT IPO. On the other side, Washington's strategy combines targeted deregulation, specifically avoiding mandatory licensing, with multi-billion-dollar federal compute integration, as demonstrated by the Genesis mission. The cold business reality for the market today is twofold. First, institutions face acute liquidity pressures. The $8.6 billion CXMT listing poses an immediate liquidity drain on broader tech equities as capital shifts to accommodate it. Second, the early release of the 2.8 trillion parameter Kimi K3 weights requires an immediate reset of enterprise security assumptions regarding open source capabilities. The landscape of available open models has shifted, and corporate risk models must be updated accordingly. As we watch these forces collide, it leaves us with a critical question to consider. In the race for AI compute and capability, will the victor be decided by who builds the most advanced models, or simply by who controls the capital and infrastructure required to run them? Thank you for joining this explainer. Visit our sponsor at bestai.org for deeper market breakdowns, and we will see you next time.